This is Join Us in France, episode 168. This episode is brought to you in part by Patreon supporters and Addicted to France, the tour company that specializes in small group tours in France. Bonjour, I'm Annie, and today's show is about the Loire Valley, a show I recorded a few weeks back with Janice Chung, who is going to tell us about Loire Valley chateaus, famous and not so famous. But first, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the only travel show exclusively dedicated to helping you prepare your trip to France. One of the things I love about doing the show is that I get to introduce you to other people who love to travel and are also seeking great vacations and experiences in France. Janice, in particular, shares a lot of great tips with us today. She'll tell us about Chenonceau, Chambord, Cheverny, Château de Beauregard, le Clos Lucé, Château Valmer, and we also talk about going on a hot air balloon ride over the Loire Valley, what it was like staying in chateaus instead of going to hotels, and because Janice is a retired school principal, we talk about visiting the area with children, and also something that many of you ask me about all the time, we talk about going wine tasting in the Loire Valley. So it's a very full show today. Let me note that longtime listeners will probably remember Janice from her first appearance on the podcast. That was on episode 86 about her search for unique experiences in France. And Janice is also the author of a wonderful blog about traveling to France called francetraveltips.com. If you're interested in the Loire Valley, you should also check out episode 82. So that's a trip report on a first visit to the Loire, episode 28 with Elise and myself on Loire Valley wines, episode 166 about going to both the Loire Valley and Normandy, and there may be others. We've done so many. Remember to use the search function on the Join Us in France website. It's really chock full of information. The extra content for email subscribers this week is called Getting the Best Out of Your Smartphone While in Paris, which includes info on finding free Wi-Fi in Paris and where you can charge your phone while out and about in Paris. Stay tuned after the interview for my personal update. I just came back from leading a wonderful tour in Paris, and I want to tell you about that. And now here's the interview. Welcome back to Join Us in France.
Thanks, Annie, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You have been to France many, many times. You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Janice Chung, and I started a blog almost 3 years ago about traveling to France, looking at unique experiences and tips. And I keep going back because there's so much to see. So it is my love. I can't say enough about the country. It's so diverse.
And your blog is called?
francetraveltips.com.
Excellent. Okay, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
So we don't have a great connection via Skype, but let's see how well we fare and discuss the Loire Valley together, because you've been to many of these chateaus, some that I've never been to. So I look forward to hearing from them from you. But just to give a little bit of background, in 2000, UNESCO World Heritage designated the whole Loire Valley as a World Heritage Site.
Yes.
And
I'm actually surprised it took them that long.
It's true, because there's so much concentrated along that river, and the Cher river as well. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So do you want to go down your notes and take the lead, and I'll interrupt you if I have gems of wisdom to add.
So basically, My last trip was in 2015, and I brought one of my best friends along who really wanted to see all these chateaus. I think, history aside, it's the architecture. It is, these castles are so beautifully designed, gardens, the turrets, and, the activities that happen, particularly during the summer, that it's a really attractive place to visit. And it's actually very close to Paris. So the trip that we took, we flew into Charles de Gaulle, picked up a car, and drove westward. And by train, I think it's about 2 hours, but we took about 4. I'm not sure, because I looked at my notes, and I'm not sure what took us 4 hours. I know we stopped because we had jet lag. And we used 2 towns as our base. One was Blois, and the other was Tours.
Okay, so Blois is Blois.
Yes, that's correct.
And Tours is Tours. Right.
And I've been in the Loire Valley before, and a friend and I, we stayed in Saumur, Saumur. So it's just picking, 2 towns where you can do day trips. So you're not in the car a long period of time.
Right.
And that worked out beautifully. I think we were in each town for about 3 nights.
Okay. Yeah, and that gives you plenty of time to see several of the chateaus while not spending your whole days driving around.
Exactly. And, I'm a little embarrassed to say, because I counted up how many chateaux we visited. And in the 1 week, we visited 12 chateaux.
Wow.
Now, one was closed, but, at least we got to see the outside.
Right.
And
so you did 2 a day.
Yeah, pretty much, which was heavy. But my friend really wanted to see a lot, and some of the most well-known ones. We certainly visited a few that were lesser known, but just as interesting.
Yeah.
We also, I should point out, we went in the month of April. It was, I think we were in the 2nd week in April. The weather was spectacular. It was about 20 degrees, sunny. Nighttime was still pleasant.
Yeah.
So it wasn't cold. You didn't have the crowds. And it's not a big downside, but you don't get the gardens in full bloom.
That's true.
Some of the gardens were not bad. Some of them were, they needed a lot more growth. So it's a give and take.
Right.
If you visit in the summertime, certainly you're going to get beautiful gardens, but you're also going to get the crowds.
Yep.
But you're also going to get more festivals, which I know we're going to talk about later.
Right.
So it's choosing the right time.
Yeah.
My feeling is most people, when you go to France, you're going to go back. I mean, I've been to the Loire Valley now 4 times, maybe 5. And I never get sick of it. So go in the spring, see it when it's not crowded, and then go back.
Yeah. Well, and some of these chateaus are not as crowded as others.
Yes.
Like you mentioned Lucé, Villandry. They're probably not quite as crowded as Cheverny or Chambord or, places like that.
And, even those, I mean, nothing is as crowded as the Palace of Versailles.
That's true.
You'll never encounter a chateau in the Loire Valley that's as crazy busy as that place.
That's correct. That's a very good point.
So, and the areas that they occupy, the property is massive. At Chambord, for example, you can rent bicycles and just cover the, bicycle through the big property.
Yeah, the property.
So that's nice.
Yeah, that's what we call le domaine de Chambord. So domain, the domaine.
Yes. And, some of these, to my surprise, I thought, for example, Amboise was Château d'Amboise, but they actually call it Château Royal d'Amboise.
Yes.
So, or, the Fortress Royale de Chinon.
Yes, yes.
It's more than just a chateau, a castle.
Yes. They do tend to add kind of the title. I mean, if it's a, Résidence Royale, that's better than just a chateau.
Because the king lived there or stayed there anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of some of the, I guess the top of everybody's list would be Château de Chenonceau.
Yeah.
And it's a chateau that straddles the River Cher.
Yep.
And it's got some interesting history. I mean, my background is not history, but so I don't have a detailed knowledge.
Yeah.
But I do know, Diane de Poitiers was the mistress of Henri II.
Uh-huh.
And basically, when he died, she had to give it back to Queen Catherine de Medici.
Yes.
So, but, she did get another chateau in that place, Château Chaumont-sur-Loire. So that, that kind of history can make it fun.
Yes. Yes, and I do recommend when you visit those places, I'm not going to be adding a ton of things on the history today because I think that deserves specific episodes, which we'll probably get to with Elise, and she's the one who gets into all the history and all that. So probably someday we'll do an episode on Chenonceau and get into all of those details. Today I just wanted with you, since you've seen so many of them, go do an overview of what they all have that struck you as particularly interesting.
Yes, I mean, Chenonceau, what you can do too, at most of these chateaus are rent the audio guides. Now, sometimes they're included in your admission, and sometimes they're a couple of euros. Yeah. And they're well worth it. Yes. They're pretty detailed.
Yeah, some of them are way too much. I remember, I can't remember which one was like, oh, will this ever stop? Like this person was giving us a lecture on things that seemed way too detailed oriented to me. And I think Amboise had an audio guide that I thought was well done and just kept my interest up anyway. Mm-hmm. So, they're so cheap. It's worth trying. And if you can't stand it, put it down, but try it.
Or fast forward, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were at Chenonceau for 5 hours, which is an incredibly long time. Now, we actually had lunch. Oh, yeah, we had lunch too at... there's another building on the property. Mm-hmm. But Chenonceau is known for the arches that cross the River Cher. And people can actually, from what I haven't done it, they can take a boat trip.
Yes.
And you'll actually go under the arches.
Yes, you can canoe, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. And I've also been there at nighttime when they had the Son et Lumière, which is the sound and light show.
Yeah.
So what they do is they flash images on the actual chateau. There's classical music, and then there's commentary. When I went many, many years ago, all the commentary was in French, way too fast for me. And it was tough. It was, okay, I'll be honest, it was boring. After a while, I can only see so many images of people from the Renaissance. And not understand.
But it was, it was many years ago. Hopefully they've updated it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, other chateaus like Blois and Chinon, they have sound and light shows as well.
Yeah.
And that's very popular from, I think, around April to August.
Yeah. I think those would be really worth checking out, like maybe their ratings on TripAdvisor to see if people particularly enjoyed, because a lot of these are redone, and recently they've made a lot of progress on light shows and sound shows, just technical progress. They're just nicer now than they were 20 years ago. So I think it's worth, if there's a few places where you're going to be spending the night close enough that you could spend the evening, check them out, because that would be a fun experience, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Even if you can't understand what they're saying, the classical music is lovely.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think Chenonceau should be on everyone's list, because it's not just the architecture and the interiors, which they try to replicate with tapestries and things like that, but the gardens are stunning.
Yeah.
They're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and most of these bigger, more famous chateaus have furniture inside, and not all of them. The furniture is not necessarily the original furniture that was there when Diane de Poitiers lived there or whatever, But it is furniture from that period of time.
Right.
Because you have to remember, in France, the revolution did a number on everything. And so I haven't checked on the history, but it's very likely that a lot of these chateaus got robbed during the French Revolution, and that they've had to put furniture back in, either copies of the originals or just another period piece, but not, from somewhere else.
Right. So I think Chenonceau, top of the list. The next one would be Château de Chambord.
Yeah.
We spent 5 hours there as well. It's just, when I was looking at my notes, those were the two chateaus we spent so much time, and it's understandable. I think Chambord is the largest chateau in the Loire.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd have to double check that.
I think it is. It's physically the biggest one.
Yes. It's gigantic. And here, I think I saw, okay, so people could rent bicycles. I think you could also do a horse and carriage ride.
Probably.
And they had an excellent audiovisual presentation. I was really impressed. Talking about how it was created, its history, things like that.
Yeah. It's a huge one. It's so beautiful. And it's, I think Chambord is the one that they've modeled some of the Disney castles on. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because when we went, this is going to date it, but my niece, who's now like 20, she was maybe 10. So it's been a long time. And so we went to Chambord, and then a couple of days later, we went to Disneyland Paris.
Yes.
And when she saw the castle at Disneyland Paris, she was like, "Oh, c'est pas Chambord, hein?" So she said, this is nothing like Chambord. Like, this is not that impressive, They
try.
But they tried, yes. But Chambord is just massive and beautiful.
Yeah. And, you were talking about Disney, and Château d'Uzé is another one that's definitely worth visiting. And
that's USSE.
Yes, USSE. And Charles Perrault wrote La Belle au Bois dormant, and it was also known Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
So interestingly, they've tried to recreate the story inside the chateau with wax figures or mannequins. And what's really funny is I was reading on TripAdvisor or something. Someone made a comment that I totally agreed. They're scary looking. Like, it's a little eerie. I think someone commented in a review, they really need to update the inside. And I agree. I don't mean it's a castle.
Yeah.
I mean the story.
Yeah.
I mean, wax figures can be scary to begin with, but these are really scary. And that's what I remember.
Yeah. And you know what? I've visited a lot of chateaus where they try to make it come to life with wax figures. And most places, it does not work. It's awful.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the other problem, too, is part of the tour at Uzé takes you up to, it's like an attic, and it's very dark. And you're walking around going, what is this place? Yeah. So once again, this is a chateau that is so attractive from the outside. And, it's definitely worth visiting.
Mm-hmm. But maybe if you need to skip the outside, this might not be a bad one.
Maybe, yes.
Well.
Yeah. Now, the chateau that's also high on the list that may be better on the outside than the inside, but it's still nice on the inside, is Château Villandry.
Yes, Villandry, yes.
Yes. Magnificent gardens, which are on 3 levels. But they have all types of gardens: flower, vegetable, water gardens. and there are 3 terraces, and they're meticulously maintained.
So that's a beautiful one.
Stunning. Yes, it really is. And from what I've read, they actually have 10 gardeners who maintain it throughout the whole. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that one's Villandry. See, that's one I have not seen.
Oh.
And it's not too far from Tours?
I'd have to double check my map. Yes, that's correct. Not too far at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, in terms of, so a lot is, I worry about little kids at some of these chateaux. They might be bored to death.
Yeah.
If it's just the architecture and gardens. But there are some chateaux, particularly in the summer, that will have festivals.
Yeah.
And, I think it was Saumur that had this whole medieval festival that...
Saumur.
Pardon?
Saumur?
Yes.
Okay.
Saumur.
Yeah.
And, they had jousting. So,
yes, that's
knights
fun.
on horses trying to knock each other off. Sword fighting. And it was very, very well done. And, displays and things like that. So that's what kids would enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. Kids, those chateaus are not, unless they're doing something unusual for children, it would be fairly boring, I mean, if you have one kid who's used to, I raised an only daughter, and so she was used to being dragged all over the creation, and she was very patient. But kids who are not used to that and are used to being just with other kids all the time, they tend to not be very patient with chateaus and gardens.
During the reenactment, they actually invited, 6, 7 adults and kids. I don't want to say on stage because it was like right in the courtyard to participate.
Oh, fun.
So that was really good.
Yeah.
In the crowd.
So in your notes on the first page, you talk about a hot air balloon ride.
Oh yeah. So
where was that?
They picked us up in near Amboise.
Okay.
And it wasn't cheap, but it was one of those bucket list things. I always wanted to do a hot air balloon ride. It was about 189 euros, and that was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
They have morning and evening flights, but everything is dependent on the weather.
Absolutely, yes.
So I remember I was in the Loire Valley one year, and they had, I couldn't get a flight just because the weather just wasn't perfect for them. But the time we did it back in 2011, I think it was, they picked us up at 7 p.m. near Amboise, and the flight only lasted about an hour. But, it's the whole experience of how do they set it up?
Yeah.
How do they, inflate it? It was a very, very quiet.
Yeah.
We up and down. I mean, we got very close to the ground that you could see. I think it was a bunny rabbit or something that was, crossing the field.
Wow.
We could see some private chateaux, which were amazing. I liked it, but didn't love it because I was hoping to see more famous chateaux. We did see Château d'Amboise.
Yep.
Because obviously we lifted off near there.
Near there, yes.
Right.
Yeah, 1 hour is not maybe enough to go very far. I don't know. I've never done that, but.
And, there are other hot air balloon rides in different locations.
Right.
So what you don't get is, C7 Chateau on your ride. I think what they do basically is they stay in certain areas and you'll see you'll see one, you might see 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just look at the draw and the winds too.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. They have to keep you safe.
Yes. And then it ends off, you land and then they take you back to a picnic area and you celebrate with champagne.
Wow.
So it was fun and I'm glad I did it. And, the views were stunning, but not cheap.
That's good. Well, that's something that people can think about if they want to do something unusual.
right
around the Loire Valley. And I think canoeing is also pretty common around the Loire.
And renting bicycles, because the Loire Valley is extremely flat. And so you can actually rent a bike and go from chateau to chateau.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why you'll see a lot of bike tours that pick that area. Provence, not so much.
Yeah.
Very big, but Loire Valley, easy to do a bike tour.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a couple we had an episode about that, but I can't remember what number it was, but it was one of the last 50 or something. I don't know. It's all a blur. It's all a blur.
A lot of episodes. They've been great.
So,
I was talking about Amboise. That is actually a very beautiful chateau, particularly on the outside, because they've got flags up. Just for photographers, it's great. Mm-hmm. It's high up, so you're looking down at the river. Mm-hmm. And it was Da Vinci's final home.
Yes. That is a beautiful place.
Yeah. When I was there in the month of April one year, they were having the Foire d'Amboise. So, and there were tents, music, food, local products for sale. So that was a nice tie-in.
Yeah.
It's a nice town. It's not too big.
Yes. It is true. It is one of the nicer, it would be a good one if you wanted to stay close to one of the chateaus. That would be a good one, I think.
Mm-hmm. And the nice part about Amboise is you actually get two chateaus not for the price of one, but right nearby is Le Clos Lucé.
Yep.
And it's also known as the Leonardo da Vinci Museum.
Yes, and that one's really interesting, even with kids. I think that one's really interesting.
Yeah, inside and out. Basically, what they've done is they've recreated many of his inventions. Mm-hmm. And I particularly like the ones outside, and I think a lot of people do. What they filled this beautiful parkland with his inventions, and you go from exhibit to exhibit.
Yep. And you get to try some of them, a lot of them actually. You get to, crank things and try things, and
yeah,
it's fun.
It's amazing what Da Vinci, he was absolute genius. What an inventor.
Yeah, and the thing is, anything he thought of, he drew and he tried to put together. Mm-hmm. It's like us, if we woke up every morning with some crazy idea, but we actually had the time to do it. It'd be different, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I think that's a chateau. Bring the kids to. Hopefully in the summertime, they've got more demonstrations and things like that.
Yeah, Clos Lucé is definitely one that's great for kids.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you don't hear about it as much, certainly as compared to Chambord and Chenonceau. So it's surprising how fabulous it is.
Yeah,
the gardens included.
Yeah.
In speaking of kids, because I'm from Canada, I didn't grow up with the comic Tintin. Am I saying that?
Tintin, yes.
Yes, and when I arrived at Château de Cheverny, and I went because I liked the look of the chateau. Yeah. I saw this sign, and that was basically like a recreation of one of the comic book covers.
Oh, fun.
Maybe, I don't know, you could tell me, but maybe there was a storyline where Tintin was at Cheverny. It must have, but I don't know if it was a series or just a one-off.
Okay, it's entirely possible, but I'm not a big fan of Tintin, and it's been years since I've read any of them.
Yeah.
So I can't. If my cousin here is gonna hate me because he knows all of them. He's like, in this book there's this subplot about this and that.
It is so popular. When I'm in Paris, some of those stores are filled with the little Tintin recreations, the little, I don't want to call them dolls, figurines.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're expensive.
Yes.
But anyways, Cheverny is beautiful. Once again, beautiful grounds. And it's also known for the hunting dogs. And right. I didn't see this because we arrived in the morning. But supposedly every afternoon, it's the feeding of the dogs. And they're cute.
Yep, the big old hunting dogs. They're tall. They got long legs. They're running dogs. They're interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Yeah, that would be a good one for kids, to take the kids to that one.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And for adults like me, it's the architecture again.
Yeah. Yeah, the gardens, the architecture, the medieval festivals. Although medieval festivals could be good for kids too. Some of them, you get to eat supposed medieval foods. You get to see reproductions of things, play old medieval games like wooden games. So that would be good too.
Right. This is I don't even know if it's smaller, but you don't hear about it as much, is Château de Beauregard.
Beauregard, okay.
And it's known for its gallery of portraits. I think there's like over 325 portraits of famous people.
Oh, wow.
From the 17th century. But what I really loved about the chateau was on the property. What they've done is they've taken, 20 maybe, of the portraits, and they've displayed them throughout the grounds. And they're beautiful looking. It just makes your journey through the property a little more interesting.
That's cool.
It is. I mean, to me, that's creative. You could just have, grass.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it. But they made it much better than that.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. And then, to see all those portraits inside is quite amazing as well.
Very good.
Yeah. Something about being in the Loire Valley is, if you can get the chance, is to stay in a real chateau.
Yes. I
had the opportunity to stay in 3. The first time, like over 30 years ago, I was driving around and thought, maybe I'll see if I can get a room at the chateau. It's Château d'Artigny in Montbazon, and I believe it's south of Tours. It's actually, I think, near Chenonceau.
Okay.
Surprisingly, it was bought by François Coty, who was a perfume magnate in the 1900s.
Okay.
And it was beautiful. And I mean, I checked my notes, and this was like, I think I only paid $120 for the night. And it was beautiful. I just stayed there a night, had dinner there, and it was fabulous. So, that was fun. Whether you'll get a hotel for $120, I doubt it.
Yeah, probably not around there. But, in general, in France, if you look for that type of lodging, there are a lot of chateaus that will have transformed at least some of it into a hotel. You can find actual chateaus where you can stay in, and some of them, probably not around the Loire Valley in the middle of the summer, but some of them are quite inexpensive. Right.
I mean, I stayed at one called Château des Tertres, Tertres, and it was near Château Chambord-sur-Loire, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like the exterior, and my room was fine. The breakfast was phenomenal. I got my fromage blanc at breakfast, which I love.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they, when I looked for it, I think 2 years ago when I was going to take my friend to the Loire, they were closed for renovations. And I checked again, and they're back up. And I'm going, that's great. So you're right. You don't have to pay a ton to stay in a real chateau.
Yeah, it depends. It depends when you go, where you go. I know that around the southwest, it's not unusual to find lodgings in a chateau. And some of them are extremely well done. Some of them not as well. Like last time I was in the Dordogne, we stayed at a chateau. And I think, especially for people who are on a honeymoon, that would probably be a good bet, is to find, instead of a regular hotel, go to a chateau.
Yes. It's memorable. It's a treat. It's a real treat.
Yeah.
One year, this is many years ago as well, a friend and I had reservations at Château de Chissé, and it's near Chenonceau, and it was actually built in the 1500s for the Chancellor of France, and it's now obviously a hotel. But we got bumped up because a bike tour was coming through. So we got a room with an anteroom and a big fireplace,
Oh, wow.
It was a beautiful chateau, absolutely stunning.
That's great.
So, you can come upon some really unbelievable stays when you're in the Loire Valley.
Yeah. And there's lots and lots of chateaus because they're the famous ones. Because even the less famous ones, like some of the ones you name, like Clos, Lucé, Villandry, Chambord, those are not as famous. But there's even smaller ones that are even less famous than those that you can visit. And some of them are privately owned, and so you can just stop by and take a photo from the road or something.
Yes, and certainly done that. Unfortunately, when I was there in April a couple of years ago, there's one called Château de Montpoupon. And sadly, I was there right at lunchtime, and they closed.
Ah.
Sometimes, these bigger ones, they don't close at lunchtime, but the smaller ones, they do.
Yeah, if it's just one or two people, they're not going to starve.
Yeah, exactly. But, I remember going to one chateau, Guy Payon, something like that. It was old. It was still lived in. And, I don't know how people can afford to keep these chateaus running. And it was pretty rustic inside, but still worth visiting.
Yeah.
And then we picnic. They had picnic tables and, on the property.
Yeah. It's interesting. I listened to a radio program recently where they were talking about French chateaus and saying that there's 1,000 chateaux for sale in France on any given day.
Oh, wow.
So what happens is that the tax structure in France is so that, and they're talking about changing this, but owning a chateau, most of the advantage that you get if you buy a chateau is if you pay a lot of taxes because you're a rich person to begin with. That it gives you, if you buy a chateau classé, so something that's recognized as a historical value, then you get tax breaks. But if you're not a rich person to begin with, those tax breaks don't help you at all because you don't make enough money to make it worth it.
Yeah.
And so it's that by itself discourages regular people from buying a chateau and renovating it and turning it into a hotel, because until they get revenue from that hotel, if and when they ever do, they don't get any tax. I mean, they're entitled to the tax breaks, but they're not in that tax bracket.
Oh, geez.
So it does them no good. And so it's a problem. And that's why a lot of these chateaus are falling into disrepair because a corporation, if you wanted to get together with 50 friends and set up a corporation to renovate this fabulous chateau, well, you wouldn't see any of the fruit of your labor for probably 10 years until you can rent it out or something. So,
and I'm sure it could turn into a money pit as well. If you're dealing
absolutely.
With the 15, 16, 1700s.
Right. Because there's a lot of stuff you can't do just because it's a historical chateau. So there are rules of what you can do to it and what you cannot. And, so I know some people, I'm acquainted with some people who actually bought a chateau and renovated it well enough to put it on for rent. And I think the place goes for like 10,000 a week. Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful. It's from the 1200s. They did a really nice job with it and stuff. But these are people who were super wealthy to begin with.
Sure, of course. Well, there's an interesting program that I discovered. The Canadian in Canada, one of our networks is the CBC. And there's a TV show that they brought in from England, and it was called Escape to the Chateau. And so I've only watched one episode, but I think it was aired in Britain a couple of years ago. And it's about this couple who buy a chateau and renovate it. And one of the episodes I saw was how they put together a wedding, reception.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how they did it because it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Well, they probably had a lot of money to begin with, or a lot of friends, or something. Or they
must have.
If you have 100,000 to invest every year for 10 years in the chateau, and then at the end of that, you can turn it into a fabulous reception hall. But how much can you charge for a reception?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you'd ever get your money back is what I'm saying it's, anyway, so if you have a strong desire to renovate a French chateau, the good news is there are at least 1,000 for sale on any given day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The bad news is it'll eat you alive.
Yeah, welcome to your money pit.
Yeah. So some people do it profitably, I'm sure, but I can't imagine. If I was to try something that crazy, I would just buy a very small one, the smallest one. Start with a small one and see if you can. Because they're smaller than a chateau. You could get a maison de maître. So that's the master's house. That's already probably, I don't know, 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. I mean, it's already a big house, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that would be
compared to a chateau.
Right. Those chateaus, they're probably, 10 times that. So just redoing the roof, how do you do that?
And that's what's fun, when you're traveling to the Loire as a tourist, to see how they've built these gigantic homes, because, they were homes.
Yeah.
And to stay in one is, an added bonus.
Absolutely.
And some of these chateaus, too, their means of earning money could be wine. There was one chateau I visited, Château de Valmer. Not only did they have beautiful gardens with fruit and vegetables, but they also made their own wine, and it was actually quite good.
How do you spell that one?
Valmer.
Valmer. Okay.
Yes. I mean, the Loire Valley is fabulous for their wines. Their Touraine, or my favorite is the Vouvray.
Yeah.
And there's actually a town called Vouvray. And so certainly when you're in the Loire, besides visiting these chateaus, definitely go do some wine tasting.
Oh, yeah. I would recommend that. Or go to the grocery store and buy the local wines and try them that way.
Yeah.
That would be another good way to do it.
And, I always say when you're at a restaurant, get the local wine, get a Pichet, the house wine, because the house wines can be cheap and they can be fabulous.
Yep. Very good. All right. Have we gone through most of your lovely list?
I think so. As I said, there's so many chateaus, really big ones like Blois and Chinon. But, I think it's a question of researching and finding out what special, experiences might be there or attractions.
And definitely it's worth, I wouldn't say I'd spend some people will spend a whole month just going from chateau to chateau. I can't imagine doing that for more than 4 or 5 days, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even a week of all the chateaus, we were chateaued out.
Yes. You would get chateaued out.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Janice. And again, remind everybody the name of your website.
FranceTravelTips.com.
And it's really cool.
Yeah, well, I try to, share some unique experiences that you might not find in tour books.
Yeah. And that's the name of the game, is to find the good, yet not too crowded.
Yes.
Because if you show up and you have another 50 people with the same guidebook under the arm, and I won't name them, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's not as fun.
Yeah, it gets frustrating.
It's not quite as much as do it like a local, that in those circumstances, it's just a slogan.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah. All right. Thank you, Janice.
Oh, and thank you so much, Annie.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Sharon Talbot, for signing up to support Join Us in France on Patreon this week. Your donation lets me know that I bring valuable information to you and that you want to give back. Thank you also to all the patrons who support the show month after month. I want you to know how much I appreciate your continued support. To support the show on Patreon and learn about Lunch Break French, go to patreon.com/join us. patreon.com. Join us. No spaces or dashes. There are other ways you can support the show. To see them all neatly listed, go to joinusinfrance.com/support, where I list several support possibilities. And as we approach the holiday season, and I suppose you'll be making extra purchases as gifts, I appreciate all of you who go to amazon.com through Join Us in France. If you don't know how to do that, go to joinusinfrance.com and look for the Amazon logo. Click on that. It will take you to your Amazon store, be it the French one, the American one, etc. And the show gets a small commission for any purchases you make. Lots of people want to do that. Sometimes they forget. So I hope you don't mind if I remind you just as the holidays are coming up. For my personal update this week, I just came back from leading a tour in Paris and I had such a great time. I almost canceled it because there were just, quote, just 3 people. And financially, it didn't make much sense. But I decided to go ahead with it because I need the practice. And because they were willing to go ahead with the tour. They knew Elise would be joining us because it really didn't make sense financially for 2 of us to be there. But you know what? I am so glad it worked out and that I went and that they were happy with it. I'll have one of them on the show soon to tell you how it went from their perspective. But let me give you my perspective. I don't have the art background or the guiding experience that Elise does. And a couple of times I got turned around and we had to backstrap a few steps. But I have really caught the bug. And of course, as you can hear in my voice today, that's not the only bug I caught. But never mind that, it's just a cold. I really loved preparing for this tour. I loved looking for good stories and historical, salient historical events that helped explain what you see in France. And there is so much to see in Paris. It's really easy to just walk around and not have any idea what to do next. I know when you listen to the show, you're probably thinking, oh, I want to do that. And then you're there and you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm just lost. I don't know what else to do. So that's the great thing about being on a tour is because there is a schedule. It's curated. I decided on a few things especially with this one. We decided together what they wanted to see, and we fit it all in. We packed a lot in, but we went to the heart and the most interesting bits of everything we saw, and it was so much fun to do. The folks on this tour were absolutely lovely, really smart, really interested. They were happy to finally meet me, and I was really happy to have a chance to meet them. Again, it was a little eerie that they knew so much about me and I knew zero about them, but that's okay. I'm happy to do that, and we really hit it off very well, very, very well. And it's a self-selection process. If you don't like the podcast, you're not going to book a tour with me, and that's fine. I don't want people on the tours who don't want to be with me, So that was really wonderful to feel the connection right away. And they said something really sweet at the end of the tour as we parted. They said, it's like we have a friend in Paris. And I'm really, really happy that they felt that way because now I have friends in Virginia. I know that tour guides are supposed to be professional who can rattle off facts but I'm not really interested in being your Wikipedia page. And judging by the looks on the faces of people who join these big tours, I don't think most people are really interested in a lot of facts. On the tour, I am interested in making you feel comfortable, happy, show off my country, make you laugh if I can, give you a taste of French life at its best, and really make it something special that you will enjoy. I did memorize a few facts for this tour, but for me, it's all about experiencing France and not about, facts. We visited several museums. I have found that if I stick to telling stories about how a painting or a piece of art came to be, rather than the art per se, because that's Elise's domain. She really knows a lot about art, and she can, talk about the various movements and why they did this and why they did that. Me, I go looking for the funny stories behind the paintings. And so I really enjoyed that, and the people on the tour enjoyed it too, so it was wonderful. And really, I want to thank them for coming and for accepting to be on a tiny custom tour instead of a bigger one. We are a small company. It's normal that sometimes we're not as well known as many other tour companies out there, and that's okay. It'll take time to get this off the ground. The next tour we're offering is in May 2018, and the one in September 2018 for the Dordogne is sold out. So for some reason, that one just caught on fire. People wanted that one right away, and they knew right away. We have a few bookings for the Paris tour in May. We hope to get a few more, because then both Elise and I can be on the tour and make it, give you the full experience. So check out addictedtofrance.com. And if you have friends who are interested in joining a tour in France, let them know about it too. The best way to connect with me is to email me, Annie@joinusinfrance.com, or search for the Join Us in France Close group on Facebook. And if you have feedback on what you heard on an episode, you can leave me a voicemail. It's 1-801-806-1015. This is the French tip of the week. For the French tip of the week this week, last week in Paris, I didn't run into a single person who wasn't willing to speak English with us. So what are you to do if you want to practice your French? Well, I suggest you try saying this. Pourrions-nous parler français, s'il vous plaît? J'ai besoin de m'entraîner. Could we speak French, please? I need to practice. Pourrions-nous parler français, s'il vous plaît? J'ai besoin de m'entraîner. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2017 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.